Hello, thank you for listening to Psyche Design. My name is Megan Lavoda, and today I'm going to be talking about intuitive feeling types. So, if you are familiar at all with temperament theory, those who prefer intuition and feeling are referred to as either Kierkegaard's The Idealist, or Linda Barron's Essential Motivators system refers to them as the catalysts. This group of types would be the ENFJ, INFJ, INFP, and ENFP. But I'm not going to go that into temperament today. I'll talk a little bit about NFs, but this is a response to a lot of just things going on in the world right now. Me as an NF, some of my thoughts, and also just yeah, let me just jump into it. Um So, in case you've been living under a rock, we've been living in some pretty divisive times. A lot of turmoil, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of fear. I don't even know how to refer to it anymore because everything feels like a cliche. It's like, oh, we're in unprecedented times. We're so divided. Yeah. So, that's the elephant in the room. And what I want to talk about is the way that um, we're so divided. I'm noticing this pattern of NF personality types kind of going off the deep end and into delusion and into, uh, I guess, consider this a explanation of why some NFs are acting in certain ways, and also as someone who gets it, wanting to help other NFs with what's happening right now. So essentially, in my opinion, coming from a Western point of view, from Western culture, there is a strong bent in our uh, economy, in our culture, in our social norms. There's a strong uh, bent toward sensing and thinking. So if we're thinking about trying to find a balance between sensing and intuition, feeling, and thinking, we each have our own individual journeys of integrating those polarities. But then externally in our culture, that story is playing out uh, at a larger scale where organizations are representing different sides of the polarity. Countries are representing those sides. And in my opinion, we have been steeped in preference for sensing and thinking for so long, and to where a lot of people who do have a natural preference for intuition and feeling have been relegated into these roles of needing to be the quirky one, uh, the starving artist, the helper, the one picking up all of the pieces. Uh, it's like, I want to point out that so much of the behavior and traits that we associate with specific types or with specific functions is always a reaction to um, the context and the cultural pushes, in the sense that the context and the culture in which someone using extroverted sensing lives is going to influence the way in which extroverted sensing as a cognitive function is going to express. So I want to unpack a layer and kind of just say that intuition and feeling, what we know of that to be true about those things, uh, are influence the way that those functions manifest is influenced by our culture and by the context of the situation. And we know that when Carl Jung said that both feeling and thinking can be objective, that was very radical, because people were like, well, feeling isn't objective. What do you mean? Because feeling has not been valued in our society. When we think of the feeling function, we think of reacting uh, hysterically, which these sort of like stereotypes of a feeler crying all the time, that's not like healthy uh emotion. That is a sign of something not being quite right in our society. That is a sign of uh, a lack of resources and a lack of human thriving, essentially. And as opposed to listening to those who are the most sensitive among us, those who are crying, we so much of our society has not valued the feeling side of things, to the point where a lot of people who do naturally value feeling and also intuition are going to feel like maybe they don't belong, maybe really like they don't have a place here on earth, like that you don't really know how to use your skills. And that's where you get the stereotype of the manic pixie dream girl, uh hipster, misunderstood, you don't understand me, sad emo type of NF vibe. It's not something that's inherent to intuition and feeling. It's a reaction to what uh, I feel like feeling and intuition has had a hard time knowing where to go in this current in this system. Uh, like it's just not as valued in this economy, really. I think that's changing a lot. And I'm not trying to sit here and be like, and act like the victim. I really don't feel like that, because I personally grew up in a family of feelers. And I know that it works. I know that all of the functions are equally valuable, but uh, there's a lot of barriers. Like people with power have preferences in a way that it influences everyone underneath that. And we all are influencing each other all the time. So anyway, the whole idea of like an NF feeling misunderstood and emotional, that's, yeah, again, that's a reaction to the fact that it's not as understood. And also that feeling sad and emotional and is a warning sign of something not being quite right in our society. And if feeling and thinking were to work together, it would be looking for solutions to solve the things that are not quite right and the things that hurt. Truth does not have to be um, against emotions. It can work together. The whole idea of facts don't care about your feelings. Well, feelings don't care about the facts that are ignoring it. Like, if you're emotional about something, like, obviously you need to accept the truth of a situation, but sometimes, like, you also can't like numb your feelings and create a system that doesn't allow people to thrive and doesn't acknowledge the core desires that people have and assume them to shut up about it. People are going to cry. or the emotions are going to come out in really weird ways, really perverted ways. It could come out as drug use, violence. You get the idea. If you ignore the fact that certain solutions logically are causing pain, or are just people aren't satisfied with it because it's not vibing with the way that human emotions work, then there's going to be an issue, and you can't force humans to fit a system that doesn't work for them. They're going to cry, they're going to be upset, they're going to get mental illness. It's the same as how you wouldn't, like, if you're trying to train a dog, you're going, if you want it to actually work, to get the dog to learn how to not like piss on your couch, you have to acknowledge the emotions of how that dog is going to work. You can't just be like, you can't just tell the dog like, stop, oh my God, why'd you do that? Like, they're not going to understand. Like, you have to meet them where they're at. Okay, my point with this is like, we are so unbalanced as a society, and what we're seeing right now is this huge wobble. A huge wobble where NFs are doubling down on being NF in a way that I've never seen. I'm young, so I don't fucking know. But I've never seen this. The amount of, there's so many spaces online where you can be an NF. There's so many startups and different companies and innovations happening where people are boldly and proudly being more intuitive and more feeling than maybe they were in the past. And there's a problem with this amongst NFs, where a lot of us are trying to heal the world, and we know that there's these problems that we're very sensitive to, that we want to be solved. But we're not going to solve that problem by 100% doubling down on NF and ignoring the ST side of things. And that's really what I think is happening, is really this wobble between like these different polarities is kind of the divisiveness that everyone's talking about, like politically and socially. Like, we're divided like between like cities and rural areas. But what's hilarious is that we're not just divided left and right these days. We're divided within political parties. We're divided up and down. We're divided sideways, whatever. There's like a division between the MBTI community, which is like such a small community. There's divisions like everywhere, basically. So I think that there's such like this wobble between the polarities are becoming so strong that like the reason why it's important for me to say, I think that our society is a little bit too sensing and too thinking, is also to say that we're trying to achieve this balance here. There's going to be an emergence of intuition and feeling. And we've seen, I think, in the past 10 years, for sure, especially 5, we've seen a huge shift of more NF representation in the media. At least I believe. I've seen a lot more movies and TV shows that seem very intuitive, and how very much intuition preference and how it operates. We're seeing a lot of activism. We're seeing a lot of people calling out things that have been hurting communities for a long time. We're having these honest conversations about it, and we're talking about our feelings. We are People are going to therapy more often. People are unpacking like these traumatic events and doing it publicly. People are being more vulnerable. It's kind of trendy to be authentic and vulnerable now. Now, I think that certain things started to happen, I guess, politically, where people either like, I don't even want to get specific because it kind of doesn't matter because it happens everywhere. But like, basically, I feel like NFs in general have felt a great responsibility in the past 5 to 10 years. Really, NFs probably feel a responsibility to heal the world or to be a pure person or to be a part of the change, be the change you wish to see in the world. NFs feel a huge responsibility for that. And it can feel like the weight of the world on your shoulders. But I think in particular, especially during the pandemic, everything has been heating up over the past year. Emotions are running high. And NFs feel like we have to be the ones to hold all of that. It's the same way as how the SP personality types, the improvisers, are the ones that tend to rise to the occasion during a crisis situation. I believe that the NFs are the ones that whenever there's some sort of spiritual shift or ethical dilemma, we feel the need to rise to the occasion. And we've been seeing it over and over. We've been seeing so many inspirational Instagram captions. We've been seeing people like getting really vulnerable on Facebook to all of these strangers. We're seeing a lot of NF reaction. And there's so much I can get into when it comes to the problems of that. But before I get into that, I just want to say generally that we're naturally wanting to double down on what we're conscious of, because that is whatever your personality type pattern is. There you have these gifts and skills and tendencies towards certain things, and we all want to play a role in society and to be ourselves, no matter what type you are. We want to feel like when we're here on earth that we're doing like what we came here to do, whatever that means for you. And so people want to be useful and use the talents and skills that you naturally have. And so whenever you see a gap, it's so easy to just want to rush in there and do it. And I think that's a great thing. And I think a lot of NFs have seen a huge gap in what we're really skilled at. And we want to rush in and do it. And I've been there. Like, I have been making YouTube videos since 2015. I have been wanting to create spaces for conversation, which, by the way, if you want to join my Patreon, I do have a discussion group where we can talk about the ways in which this transformational process in your psyche is coming up for you, and talk to people with other types and hold space for that. Anyway, I've been doing this for a while, where I want to create these sort of vulnerable conversations, and I want to help people connect and understand themselves better and heal and all of that. But what I've been realizing more and more is like, and what I think type as a tool is really helpful with, is understanding that whenever you're doing that, whenever you're trying to provide your gifts or talents, it can't come at the expense of the other side. It can't, your NF idealism can't come at the expense of sensing and thinking, or else it's not going to work. And you're going to feel, it's like if you're accidentally suppressing them, then they're going to suppress you back. And it's this whole this whole fight basically. And it's also worth realizing that a lot of times we all have this sort of bias where when we look out in the world, we're going to notice these gaps because we're so conscious of our dominant function and all of that, what our preferred functions. We're so conscious of that sliver of reality that we're going to notice all of the places in which there's a gap, and we're going to want to fill that gap. And that's great. That is a great motivator for growth and for wanting to contribute your life. It's just important to realize that if you are doing that in a way that is, it's like a certain type of attitude that you can have where you aren't, it's ignoring the paradox of the binary of feeling and thinking, sensing and intuiting, introversion and extroversion. It's ignoring that paradox and also seeing that other side as a threat to you. Where you could just maybe even completely subconsciously suppress it, and you don't even know that you're doing it. It's like we're playing these zero-sum games where we think that it's this or that, when really the truth is the third, is integrating it. And it reminds me of like the Holy Trinity, the symbol of this triangle where my or I don't know where I was going to go with that, but it reminds me of like Alcomite. I believe it's alchemy to integrate these polarities, and it is something special. And yeah, I think about the Holy Trinity and that type of idea whenever I'm thinking about this. But really what I think is happening is that there's a huge NF backlash to where while what's kind of happening is NFs shooting ourselves in the foot by being inconsistent with our logic and being imprecise with our language. But it's also what's happening is that the NF type of things are so not seen as valid that it's not as regulated as thinking and sensing seems to be regulated, in the sense where we have this, okay, well, here's one thing I was thinking about is like, in my opinion, the scientific method seems to do a great job of encompassing a balance of both extroverted thinking and introverted thinking. And I was thinking, like, do we have anything like that with extroverted feeling and introverted feeling? And maybe we do. But I think that at this stage in our development as a species, I feel like there's so much more to learn about feeling and how it works. And I think we're at a precipice for a lot of understanding that I'm sure I'll see in my lifetime. But I feel like feeling and intuition is seen as very nebulous. So it's kind of this understanding where part of why it's nebulous is because we actually have forgotten and not recorded a lot of history, like indigenous history. Like, okay, because I'm coming from a Western perspective here, is a lot of indigenous cultures did have a lot more of a developed understanding of feeling, for example, and intuition. It's really just this kind of Western bias, this sort of colonial attitude that is kind of penetrating so much, and that there's this sort of attitude that I feel is very one-sided when it comes to sensing and thinking. that is such a norm that I think that it causes a lot of distress in NF types, in the sense that we do not know how to trust our own intuition in the ways in which maybe we would if we were brought up in a different culture, or if we had more of an understanding of how that process works. So whenever I say that the NF stuff isn't as regulated, I don't really know how to explain that perfectly, but really where I'm going with that is that I think we've seen a lot of conspiracies run wild in the past few years that have been accelerating. And I think that it's because of how we regard possibilities, potential, and interpretations. Um, I think that we view them as, oh, well, that's just a potential. We don't actually know what's going to happen unless we've done some sort of experiment or survey that shows that that's what's happening. We don't know how to discern what is the most probable possibility unless we have something sensory to draw from it, it seems. Um, so and I'm not even trying to say that NFs are necessarily the ones spreading conspiracies. I do think that a lot of the conspiracies have come from a really shadowy intuition, shadow intuition place, which could be coming from a sensor having this sort of shadowy paranoia and this sort of primitive intuitive sort of thing. But then we also have uh, NFs who are so doubling down on certain ideals that they want to convey, that they are not focused on the details, and they're not being precise, and they aren't grounded in their logic and what they're trying to explain. And it doesn't help our case. Um, yeah. I feel like a lot of people watching this probably know fully well what I'm talking about. I do feel like I have a lot of NFs that watch my videos. But yeah, because I'm just kind of feeling at a loss for words when it comes to like explaining what this problem literally is. But I'll just say too, in a lot of political debates, what I've been seeing is that a lot of people that are fighting for um, the emotional well-being of people have been not feeling super responsible for explaining the logic behind what their theory is or what they're saying. And it makes it so much easier for like the thinking types to just go and poke holes in what you're saying and then disregard what you're saying. And I feel like I'm starting to just see a strong kind of hatred, or this feeling of, I guess, I don't know, there's a lot of animosity in general, I think, between all of the different polarities that exist, even beyond cognitive functions and personality type. Just, I think we're living in a really strange time where there's so much tension between these polarities. And so we're feeling that on an individual level and in our psyches, because our psyche is reacting to everything that's happening. But I guess my takeaway is that I really would like for us NF types or NFs, whatever. Um, I would love for us to lead the charge when it comes to healing and ushering in this new, I guess, world that we're about to go into. We don't know what it's going to look like. seems like every day there's a new news story about like a natural disaster and or like extreme violence, like tensions are running so high, and it's like we don't know what the future is going to look like. And we need a vision, and we need people leading that charge. And I don't want us to shoot ourselves in the foot by ignoring the fact that we need to be grounded and embodied in ourselves. We need to lean on what has come before us and what is tangible. We need to start with what's tangible and then move toward the sort of vision. There's an attitude these days where it seems like a lot of NFs will have this vision for the future and what we want it to look like. And we get frustrated when other people don't see that vision. And so we don't want to explain it. We don't want to write out the steps of what it would take. We don't want to connect that vision to where we are now. We get frustrated at people for not seeing it, for not seeing that things could be better, for not seeing that it's a core emotional problem that is causing all of this. And we need to get better at explaining it because like I think NFs, we sow seeds of doubt in other people's minds when we doubt ourselves and when we are not comfortable in our ability to communicate why we think something, or if we're not comfortable in our ability to engage with tangible reality, then we don't know how to face where we are and connect where we want to go with where we are. And I think that that's what we need to do. So anyway, please let me know if there was anything I touched on in this video that you'd like to have more conversations about. I feel like I haven't done an episode quite like this, and I would love to talk more about this. I feel very held back by the fact that I feel like I'm going really in the weeds. I don't know if I'm explaining everything correctly because I don't really know. Yeah, I'm kind of just diving right into where my brain has been, but then also trying to make sure that people can follow no matter where they're at. That's a huge thing for me. I want to be able to meet people where they're at, and I want to have people coming from different perspectives be able to jump onto the same conversation. Anyway, I'm probably overthinking that, but anyway, anything that you could think of, please, I'd love to continue this conversation. Yeah, this is just something I care so deeply about, and I'm really ready to have a lot of conversations, more specifically because I've been noting a lot of specific issues that NFs have that I've been wanting to, there's so much content that I could potentially make of like pitfalls of NFs, to where I almost am like, I don't want my whole channel to be all about NFs, but that is kind of what I'm focused on, what I understand. So there's a lot I could talk about with that. So let's just say that. So thank you for listening. Have a wonderful rest of your day. That's kind of just become my tagline at the end, which is kind of annoying. I don't know if it's a good one, but if you have a better one, let me know that as well. So thank you. We may be walking the path of individuation independently, but that doesn't mean that you're alone. While your journey is unique, we're all going through the same process along our own parallel paths. If you're craving deeper conversation about how your personality type pattern is unfolding, join us for monthly type discussions. The Psyche Design membership group comes with access to a private Facebook group, one facilitated Zoom hangout per month with breakout activities, and a monthly Q&A. For more information, check out the link to my Patreon in the description.